fast, yet every detail burned into my memory forever. I opened his door without knocking, thinking he was asleep. Instead, I froze at the sight in front of me. My stepson laid sprawled in, the bed legs apart, his hand wrapped around the biggest thing I had ever seen. It throbbed under his touch, thick and heavy, easily over 16. And I should have turned away. I should have closed the door and walked out, but I did not. Something darker and hungrier inside me stirred. My heart raced. My breath caught. I stepped closer, hypnotized. He looked up at me, his lips curling into a wicked smirk. Without words, he invited me in, and shame melted away into heat. My fingers trembled. I reached for him. He groaned as I wrapped my hand around him, struggling to contain all of him. It was too much for just his hands. He needed help, and in that twisted, forbidden moment, I offered mine. Before we dive deeper into this story, I just want to pause for a second to say thank you from the bottom of my heart to everyone who has subscribed to this channel. Your support means the world to me. Also, please do not forget to engage and share your thoughts in the comments below. I would love to hear how you feel as the story unfolds. Now let me take you deeper into the night that shattered my world forever. My name is Melissa. I am a 36-year-old housewife living in the quiet suburbs of Wisconsin. My life on the surface appeared perfect. A comfortable home, a hardworking husband, a stepson finishing college. My husband, David, traveled often for work, leaving me alone most nights. I filled the silence with cleaning, baking, gardening, anything to fight the loneliness. When David married me 3 years ago, I thought I had finally found stability. But hidden under the surface, our marriage was cold and stiff. Then there was Ethan, 19 years old, tall, golden-haired, with a body chiseled by countless hours at the gym. He was every bit the young, reckless spirit his father tried to suppress. We barely spoke beyond polite exchanges until that night. The night had been ordinary. At first, rain pattered against the windows, and the house smelled of vanilla candles. I had spent the evening curled up on the couch with a novel, trying not to feel the ache of loneliness creeping in again. David had called to say his flight was delayed. He would not be home until the next day. I decided to head upstairs early. As I passed Ethan's door, I heard a strange noise, a low, desperate groan. Alarm prickled up my spine. Washer, hurt. I pushed the door open without thinking, and there he was. Ethan's body was sprawled across, the bed muscles flexing, hands stroking a monstrous shaft that defied reason. My breath hitched, my mouth dried. I wanted to run to hide, but I stood frozen, mesmerized. He saw me. He did not stop. His blue eyes held mine, daring me, teasing me. I felt heat rush between my legs, a sensation so fierce it made me dizzy. "Come here," he whispered, his voice thick and rough. I should have fled. Instead, my bare feet moved towards him, as if pulled by some invisible string. Every step made my heart pound harder. I sat on the edge of his bed, my fingers trembling as they hovered above him. "Let me help you," I said, my voice barely. I wrapped my hand around his girth. The heat of him seared my skin. He hissed between his teeth as my thumb brushed the sensitive underside. His size was too much for one hand, so I used both slowly, moving up and down, feeling every vein, every pulse. The room spun with the forbidden thrill of it all. His breaths grew heavier. He bit his lip, hips lifting into my touch. Before I realized what I was doing, I leaned down, pressing a kiss to the swollen head. Had grown his hands, burying into my hair, guiding me. I should have felt shame. I should have felt guilt. Instead, all I felt was burning, desperate hunger. I explored him, tasted him, lost myself in him. His scent, his sounds, his sheer size overwhelmed. Me. My own body responded shamelessly, aching, begging, formal when he finally released, with a deep guttural growl. I swallowed every drop, greedily taking what it gave me. I pulled away slowly, wiping my lips, my heart hammering in my chest. Ethan's eyes glowed with something dark and possessive. That was just the beginning. He said, his voice low and dangerous. I knew in that instant there was no turning back. The line had been crossed, and nothing would ever be the same again. The morning sun streamed through the windows, warm and bright, but I felt nothing but cold, dread sinking into my bones. I laid in bed alone, sheets tangled around my legs, my body still aching from the night before. I stared at the ceiling, trying to pretend it had all been a fever dream. A terrible, shameful fantasy that could be forgotten with the new day. But it had been real. Every touch, every sound, every stolen breath between us. It had happened, and there was no undoing it. I pulled the covers over my face, willing myself to disappear. How could I ever look Ethan in the eyes again? How could I face David when he came home tonight, carrying this disgusting secret on my skin? I stayed in bed longer than usual, only dragging myself up when the house grew silent enough to convince me Ethan had gone out. I needed to avoid him. I needed to forget. I showered, scrubbing myself raw under the hot water. But the memories clung stubbornly to my flesh. The way Ethan had moaned my name. The way his hands had gripped my hair, commanding yet desperate. The way I had wanted it just as much, maybe even more. Tears pricked my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. I dressed quickly in a loose sweater and jeans, tying my hair up in a messy bun. I would make breakfast, keep myself busy, and by the time David returned, everything would go back to normal so I told myself. I stepped into the kitchen and stopped dead in my tracks. Ethan sat at the counter shirtless, a bowl of cereal in front of him. His golden skin glowed in the morning light, muscle rippling with every casual movement. His hair was damp from a recent shower, messy and boyish, but there was nothing boyish about the way he looked at me. His eyes locked onto mine, slow and deliberate, dragging down the length of my body with lazy arrogance. My face burned. I dropped my gaze and busied myself at the fridge, pretending to search for something. "Morning, Melissa," he said, voice thick with amusement. I mumbled a greeting, keeping my back to him. My hands trembled as I pulled out a carton of eggs. "You look different today," he said, his tone teasing, relaxed, glowing. Even slammed the fridge door harder than necessary. "Eat your breakfast." I snapped, my voice sharper than I intended. He chuckled low in his throat, the sound sending shivers straight down my spine. "Touchy," he murmured. I fumbled with the eggs, cracking two into a pan. I kept my eyes on the stove, willing him to leave to give me some space to breathe. But instead, I felt him move closer. His presence loomed behind me, electric and dangerous. "You do not have to pretend, Melissa," he said, voice softer, now almost intimate. "I know you enjoyed it." I dropped the spatula, my hands clenching into fists. "Stop," I said, my voice trembling. "Do not talk about it. It was a mistake." I turned around to face him, intending to put him in his place, to reassert the boundaries we had shattered. But when I met his eyes, my resolve crumbled. There was no regret in his gaze, no shame, only raw, burning hunger. "You want it again," he said, stepping closer, his hand brushing my hip. I gasped, the contact setting my nerves on fire. I hated myself for how easily my body betrayed me. Leaning into him, craving him. "No," I whispered. But it sounded weak, even to my own ears. He grinned, knowing he had won. He pressed me back against the counter, his hands sliding up under my sweater, fingers teasing the sensitive skin of my waist. I whimpered, my body arching against him without thinking. "You are mine now," he said, his voice rough with possessive need. "You crossed the line last night, Melissa. There is no going back, is Hook." My head tears filling my eyes, but when he kissed me, all my protest died on my tongue. His mirth was demanding, devouring, stealing every breath from my lungs. His hands roamed freely, learning my body with terrifying intimacy. I melted against him, my hands tangling in his damp hair, pulling him closer, needing him like I had never needed anything before. He lifted me onto the counter, effortlessly, spreading my legs, settling between them. I moaned into his mouth, my fingers clawing at his bare shoulders, the kitchen filled with the sounds of our desperate kisses, our ragged breathing, the soft slap of skin against skin. I had never felt so alive, so wanted, sadly out of control. When he slid inside me, slow and deep, stretching me almost painfully, I cried out, my head falling back. He filled me in, ways David never had, reaching places I never knew existed. Ethan moved with the reckless abandon of youth, each thrust sending shockwaves through my body. I clung to him, riding the waves of pleasure, losing myself completely. The counter rattled under us. Dishes clattered to the floor. Somewhere in the back of him, my mind, I knew this was insane, dangerous, but I no longer cared. Nothing else mattered but the way he made me feel. When we finally collapsed against each other, sweaty and shaking, the kitchen a mess around us, I realized something even more terrifying than what we had just done. I did not regret it, not even a little, and that scared me. More than anything, the house was silent when David returned that evening. I watched him from in the kitchen doorway, my heart thundering in my chest. He smiled when he saw me, tired, but happy, setting down his briefcase and opening his arms for a hug. I hesitated for a split second too long before stepping into his grace. He held me tightly, pressing a kiss to the side of my head, murmuring how much he had missed me. I forced myself to smile, to nod, to respond, but inside, I felt like I was drowning. His scent, his touch, everything about him felt foreign, now tainted by the secret I carried between my thighs. Ethan watched from the staircase, his eyes dark, unreadable. Our eyes met for a fleeting second, and my stomach twisted into 1,000 knots. I pulled away from David quickly, pretending to be busy with dinner. I needed space. I needed to think. Dinner was torture. David chatted happily about his trip, oblivious to the thick, suffocating tension in the room. I nodded, laughed at the right moments, but I barely tasted the food. Ethan sat across from me, his foot brushing mine, all under the table, a wicked smirk playing on his lips. I flinched, knocking over my glass of wine. David jumped up to help, concerned, and I muttered apologies, pretending it was just clumsiness, but inside panic clawed at me. I could not survive another night like this. After dinner, David excused himself to take a shower. The moment he disappeared upstairs, Ethan cornered me in the hallway, his body pressing mine against the wall. "I want you again," he whispered against my ear, his hands sliding up my thigh. I shoved him away, fear and guilt twisting inside me. "Stop it," I hissed. "He is upstairs. This is wrong." It was already wrong. Ethan laughed softly, a low mocking sound. "You love it," he said. "You love the danger. You love how alive I make you feel." Tears burned my eyes. I hated him. I hated myself more. "You are a child," I spat. "You are nothing but a stupid, reckless boy." His face darkened, the playful arrogance vanishing. In an instant, "You did not think I was a boy when you were screaming my name in the kitchen," he said, his voice cold and cutting. I slapped him before I could stop. That crack echoed through the hall. He touched his cheek lightly. then smiled slow and dangerous. "You will come back to me," he said simply. "You cannot resist." He turned and disappeared into the living room, leaving me trembling against the wall. I stumbled upstairs, locking myself in the bathroom. I sank to the floor, sobbing into my hands. What had I done? What kind of woman had I become? I stared at my reflection in the mirror, my face pale and haunted my eyes, swollen with guilt. I did not recognize the woman staring back at me. Days turned into weeks, and the tension in the house grew unbearable. Ethan continued to taunt me, to touch me when David was not looking, to whisper filthy promises in my ear when no one else could hear. And every time my body betrayed me, I hated him for it. I hated myself even more. David noticed my distance. He tried to talk to me, tried to reach out, but I pushed him away again, and again I was crumbling under the weight of my secret. But I was too much of a coward to confess. Until the night everything fell apart, it was late. David had gone out for drinks with some colleagues. I was alone in the house, curled up on the couch, with a blanket, trying to watch a movie, trying to feel normal. Ethan appeared in the doorway, shirtless, wearing only a pair of low-hanging sweatpants. I froze, heart slamming against my ribs. He said nothing. He just looked at me, eyes burning with possession, and like a moth to the flame, I burned for him. He crossed the room in 3 long strides, yanked the blanket off me, and pulled me into his arms. His mouth crashed down on mine, and I melted instantly. We did not make it to the bedroom. Right there, on the couch, he took me again, rough and desperate, claiming me like he owned me. I barely heard the front door open. I barely heard David's voice call out my name. But Ethan heard. He pulled away from me, just as David walked into the living room. For a moment the world stood still. David stared at Ooze, his face a mask of shock and horror. He looked at my disheveled clothes, the guilt written all over my face, and the raw satisfaction still evident in Ethan's smirk. Understanding dawned, slowly, painfully. David stumbled back a step, as if physically struck Melissa. He whispered, his voice breaking. Tears streamed down my face. I tried to speak, to explain, but there were no words good enough, no excuses that could erase what I had done. David turned and fled from the house, the door slamming behind him. I collapsed onto the floor, sobbing uncontrollably, my whole body shaking with grief. Ethan stood over me, his face unreadable. "This was always going to happen," he said quietly. "You just never wanted to admit it." I screamed at him to get out. He left without another one. I sat there on the living room floor until the sun came up, alone with my guilt, my shame, and the shattered pieces of my life. David never came back. I lost him. I lost everything. And it was all my fault.